It was a bitter Toronto winter when Eva Tran stepped off the plane, carrying little more than 2 suitcases and the kind of fragile courage only an immigrant can summon. The snow outside Pearson International Airport looked endless, a sheet of white that blurred sky and ground into one indistinguishable horizon. She hugged her thin coat tighter around her frame, the fabric inadequate against the wind that knifed through the automatic doors as they opened and closed for streams of travelers. At 24, she was beginning again from nothing, in a country where she knew no one, and her only assets were a bachelor's degree in computer science from back home, a rusty laptop she had carried across the ocean, and the stubborn belief that she could carve a life here. Eva rented a tiny basement apartment in Scarborough, one of those rooms that smelled faintly of mildew after a rainstorm, with narrow windows set so high on the wall they only revealed the passing of feet. Never the sun. Rent consumed almost all of her savings, so she took any gig she could find waitressing at a faux shop run by distant relatives, tutoring children in math, cleaning offices late at night. But her heart lived in the glow of the laptop, on the floor with her back against the radiator, coding until dawn. She freelanced on small projects building websites for local businesses, repairing databases for community centers, writing scripts to automate spreadsheets. Her English was halting at first, but she learned through Stack Overflow threads and late-night YouTube tutorials, absorbing not only syntax but a new rhythm of thought. What she dreamed of was more than survival. Eva wanted to build a platform that solved the very problem she had faced: the fragmented, confusing maze immigrants encountered when trying to navigate job applications, credential verification, and local licensing. She envisioned software that could scan, verify, and translate foreign diplomas, automate credential checks, and match newcomers with employers faster than traditional agencies ever could. To her, this wasn't just technology, it was justice. It was giving people like her a fair chance to belong. Her chance encounter with Adrian Clark happened at a networking event hosted in downtown Toronto. One of those startup mixers filled with cheap pizza, lukewarm coffee, and more ambition than air. Eva had scraped together enough confidence to print business cards, plain white cardstock with her name, email, and the word founder underlined beneath the fledgling company name. She had chosen Navi Bridge Solutions. She wore the only blazer she owned, thrifted from a second-hand shop, its sleeves too long but rolled carefully at the cuffs. Adrian noticed her near the snack table, struggling to balance a plate of pizza while flipping through her notes. He was everything she wasn't: polished, confident, the kind of man who filled a room effortlessly, tall, with the easy smile of someone used to being listened to. Adrian had studied finance at McGill and worked briefly at a consulting firm before moving into the venture capital world. He introduced himself as if the title advisor were a crown, and when Eva explained her idea, his eyes lit up, not at the social mission, she realized later, but at the potential scale. That night, he asked question after question about her target users, her business model, her plans for monetization. She answered as best she could, nervously adjusting her glasses, her words tumbling in imperfect English. He nodded often, offering small encouragements, finally leaning closer to say, "You've got something here. Something that could really take off with the right strategy." They exchanged numbers. Within weeks, he was stopping by her basement apartment, bringing takeout meals so she wouldn't forget to eat. He praised her work ethic, told her she was the smartest woman he'd ever met, made her laugh during moments when exhaustion threatened to break her. They began dating quietly, then openly. It was Adrian who first suggested that Eva incorporate formally, walking her through the paperwork, introducing her to his contacts who could advise on structuring. He covered registration fees when her funds ran low. He framed it as partnership, as love, as investment in their shared future. For Eva, who had grown up in a culture that prized loyalty and family above all, his gestures felt like destiny unfolding. In the early months, Eva's world narrowed to code and hustle. She pitched her prototype to community groups, to immigration agencies, to anyone who would listen. The first pilot program run with a nonprofit in Mississauga was chaotic but promising. Navi Bridge successfully matched 24 newcomers with jobs in logistics and IT, reducing the process from months to weeks. She cried quietly in her apartment the night she got the results, whispering, "It works. It actually works." Adrian celebrated with her, opening a bottle of wine too expensive for their budget. He spoke of scaling, of expansion, of venture capital interests that could follow. He told her she needed to think bigger, and when he looked at her across the table, his hand covering hers, Eva believed she was not just building a company, but a life, a family, a future together. But woven into that glow were shadows she did not yet recognize. Adrian began introducing himself at events as co-founder, though she had never formally given him that title. He corrected her during presentations, rephrasing her answers to investors, laughing it off later as just clarifying. When they moved from her basement apartment into a small condo downtown, he insisted their names both be on the lease reasonable. She thought then, for a couple planning to marry. He encouraged her to open a joint bank account to simplify business expenses, and she agreed, grateful to share responsibility. By the second year, NaviBridge secured a small seed grant from a provincial innovation program. Eva poured every dollar into hiring 2 part-time developers, paying them more than she paid herself. She still worked nights at the faux shop occasionally, too embarrassed to admit to investors how fragile her finances were. Adrian, meanwhile, had left his consulting role, explaining that supporting her full-time was his new mission. She accepted the sacrifice with gratitude, never questioning how their bills were being covered, never pressing when he reassured her with vague references to investments. Eva's sister back home worried aloud on their video calls. "Are you sure he's not controlling too much? Are you sure he's not pushing into spaces you should hold?" Eva laughed it off, saying Adrian was helping. That partnership meant sharing. But sometimes, when she caught him reviewing her emails without asking, or when he intercepted a call meant for her, she felt a flicker of unease. She ignored it. After all, they were engaged now, planning a modest wedding in Toronto with a handful of friends. Her father had passed away years earlier, and her mother was too frail to travel. So Adrian walked her down the aisle himself, promising to cherish her, to build with her. In the photographs, Eva's smile was radiant, though if one looked closely, Adrian's grip on her hand seemed tighter than necessary, as if ownership had been exchanged alongside vows. The company grew. A second round of funding came, small but enough to hire staff and move into a shared office space near Ryerson University. Clients trickled in. Eva worked 70-hour weeks, exhausted but exhilarated. And all the while, Adrian positioned himself more centrally, attending board meetings, signing off on financial paperwork, meeting with potential investors. He began introducing her as my technical partner rather than the founder. Eva's lawyer friend from a local immigrant rights clinic pulled her aside one evening. "Be careful," she warned gently. "You need to keep records, emails, bank statements, every decision that proves this company is yours. Partnerships can turn ugly." Eva nodded politely, but inside she bristled. She loved Adrian. He loved her. They were building a future together. What could possibly go wrong? And yet, on a snowy morning in January, Eva found an envelope slipped under her condo door. It was from a bank she had never used. Inside were documents, loan applications, refinancing papers, all bearing her name and signature. Except she had never signed them. Her breath caught, her hands trembling as she stared at the ink. She told herself it must be a mistake, some clerical error, some misfiled form. She tucked the papers back into the envelope and shoved it into a drawer, telling herself she would ask Adrian later, when the timing was better. That night, Adrian came home late, smelling faintly of cologne she didn't recognize. He kissed her on the cheek, poured himself a glass of scotch, and said nothing about the envelope. Eva, heart pounding, said nothing either. It was the first domino, the first crack in the promise. The envelope with the forged documents never left Eva's drawer. It sat there like a silent witness, a reminder of something she did not want to face. Each time she opened the drawer to fetch her notebooks, she would glimpse the corner of it, feel the chill in her stomach, and quickly look away. She told herself she would bring it up when Adrian was in a better mood, when the company was less busy, when she had more strength. But days turned into weeks, and the weight of that envelope grew heavier with every passing hour. At the office, Adrian was everywhere. He lingered near the developers, asking questions he barely understood, but framing them as strategic concerns. He emailed clients under her name, attaching himself to deals she had painstakingly built. At networking events, he spoke confidently about our company, our idea, our platform's subtle shifts in language that erased her singular contribution. Eva felt herself shrinking, her voice softer in meetings, her authority diluted by his constant presence. The first real fracture appeared in the company's finances. Their newly hired accountant, a young woman named Mira, flagged unusual transfers during a routine reconciliation. "Eva," she said hesitantly one afternoon, "I just want to double-check, did you approve these payments? They're labeled as consulting fees, but go to a shell entity called Clark Advisory." Eva frowned, scanning the statements. Thousands of dollars had left Navi Bridge's account in small, regular amounts. "No," she murmured. "I never approved this." When she confronted Adrian that evening, he smiled disarmingly. "It's just a structure for tax efficiency. Nothing shady. I used my name for convenience. You know I'm managing so many of the investor relationships now. Don't worry." He poured her a glass of wine, kissed her forehead, and within an hour, they were laughing about wedding plans again. But Mira's cautious eyes stayed with Eva. "Keep records," the young accountant whispered as she left. "Always keep records." Adrian's control deepened when he convinced Eva to authorize him as a signatory on company accounts. "It's just practical," he insisted. "What if something happens to you? We need redundancy. Investors expect it." Against her instincts, Eva signed, rationalizing that it was indeed safer to have a backup. She did not realize she had handed him the keys to her life. Soon after, she began noticing subtle changes in their office dynamics. Staff approached Adrian with questions instead of her. He positioned himself as the mediator, the protector against her intensity, painting her long hours and perfectionism as volatility. Eva overheard him one evening, speaking to a junior employee. "She's brilliant technically, but she's emotional. That's why I handle the strategic side." He said it kindly, as if defending her, but the seed of doubt planted itself in the listener's mind. Her stomach knotted when she found out Adrian had introduced himself to a potential investor as the primary founder. "It's just semantics," he argued when she confronted him. "They need to see unity. Besides, titles don't matter as long as we win." But titles did matter. They mattered in legal contracts, in the narrative investors believed, in the very identity of the company she had built from nothing. One night, Eva stayed late at the office, scrolling through financial records long after the lights had dimmed. Her heart pounded as she uncovered a pattern: repeated transfers, always just under thresholds that would trigger automatic reviews, all funneled into accounts linked to Adrian. The amounts weren't catastrophic individually, but together they formed a river of money flowing quietly out of her control. When she brought it up to Adrian, his face hardened. "Are you accusing me?" he demanded. "After everything I've sacrificed, after quitting my job, after investing my time and money, do you think I'd steal from my own wife?" His anger was theatrical, his tone wounded, but his eyes gave him away cold, flat, calculating. Eva backed down, apologizing through tears. Though inside something had shifted, the man she had once seen as her savior now stood revealed as a predator circling his prey. The true betrayal arrived not in their bank accounts, but in the government registry. A colleague at a partner nonprofit casually mentioned seeing Adrian listed as co-director of Navi Bridge in official filings. Eva's blood ran cold. She had never filed such paperwork. That evening, she logged into the government's corporate portal, her hands trembling. There it was, Adrian Clark, listed as co-director and equal shareholder, documents bearing her signature, except she had never signed them. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she downloaded the forms. The signatures looked like hers close enough to fool an outsider, but she recognized the tiny differences. The way the loop on the T in Tran was wrong, the angle of her E slightly tilted. Forgery. Plain and deliberate. She printed the documents, tucked them into the same drawer where the bank papers waited, and sat in silence for an hour. The room seemed smaller, suffocating. Adrian had not only stolen money, he had stolen her identity, her company, her future. Eva thought of calling the police, but fear stopped her. How could she prove it? What if he convinced them she had signed everything willingly? He was charming, articulate, well-dressed. She was an immigrant woman with an accent, prone to late nights and exhaustion. Who would they believe? Her isolation grew. Adrian began taking meetings without informing her. He dismissed her concerns as paranoia, gaslit her into doubting her own memory. "You're overworked," he would say gently. "That's why you don't remember signing these things." He bought her flowers the next day, booked a weekend trip, apologized profusely, then repeated the same violations weeks later. Mira, the accountant, quit suddenly, citing personal reasons. Eva suspected Adrian had pushed her out. With Mira gone, he installed a friend of his to oversee the books, sealing off one of the last avenues of transparency. And then came the ultimatum. One snowy February evening, Adrian laid a stack of contracts on their dining table. "It's time to scale," he declared. "An American firm wants to acquire majority shares. This is how we go global." Eva skimmed the documents, her heart racing. They transferred 60% of Navi Bridge's ownership to Adrian-controlled entities in exchange for capital she had never requested. Her name was buried in the paperwork, her authority reduced to a token. "I won't sign this," she whispered. Adrian's smile vanished. "Then you're sabotaging everything we've built. Do you want to throw it all away because of pride?" "We didn't build it," she said, her voice shaking. "I did." The silence stretched between them, heavy and dangerous. Finally, Adrian leaned forward, his tone low and sharp. "Careful, Eva. Without me, you're nothing but a coder in a basement. I made you. I can unmake you." Eva's hands trembled, but inside, something hardened. She realized then that this was no longer about love or even business. This was war. She did not sign. Instead, that night, she opened her old laptop, the one she had used in her basement apartment years ago. On its dusty hard drive lay thousands of emails, commit logs, contracts, and drafts from the earliest days of Navi Bridge. Every line of code, every decision, every correspondence hers alone. It was her proof, her weapon. She began backing everything up onto encrypted drives, storing copies in multiple places. She documented every discrepancy, every unauthorized transfer, every forged document. And for the first time in years, she called a lawyer, an old friend from her immigrant support network, someone who had warned her once before. When she told the story, the lawyer's face grew grim. "Eva, this isn't just a dispute. This is fraud. Systematic fraud. If you let it go on, he will take everything. You need to prepare for court." Court! The word terrified her. She pictured herself on a stand, English slipping under pressure, Adrian charming the judge with his polished lies. She feared she would lose not only her company but her credibility, her dignity. But then she remembered her dream, the platform for immigrants, the mission she had sacrificed everything for. She thought of the people she had helped, the jobs created, the families supported. She thought of her late father, who had taught her that character was the one inheritance no one could steal. And she promised herself Adrian would not win. The storm had begun. The shadows were closing in, but Eva, quiet, watchful, underestimated, was preparing to strike back. The first time Eva walked into a Toronto courtroom, she felt the weight of every step echo inside her chest. The wood-paneled walls loomed heavy. The air smelled faintly of paper and dust, and the judge's bench seemed impossibly high. She sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Across the aisle, Adrian smiled as though he were on stage, his suit crisp, his confidence unshaken. He had filed first petitioning for equitable distribution of marital and business assets. In his filings, Adrian described himself as co-founder, majority strategist, and financial architect of Navy Bridge. He requested 60% of the company, the condo, and spousal support for 10 years. To Eva, reading the documents had felt like being buried alive under someone else's lies. Her lawyer whispered, "Stay calm. We don't reveal everything today, just enough to survive until discovery." Adrian's attorney spoke first, painting a portrait of partnership and sacrifice. Adrian had supposedly given up his career to support Eva, invested his personal savings, secured vital contracts, guided strategic pivots, and expanded the company's reach. The words flowed like honey, dripping with sincerity. Adrian nodded solemnly, a man wronged by an ungrateful wife. When it was Eva's turn, her lawyer presented preliminary evidence: the financial transfers, the forged signatures on government filings, the discrepancies in bank accounts. Adrian's attorney countered smoothly, arguing that as a spouse, Adrian had implicit authority to sign, to manage, to decide. "This is not fraud," he insisted. "It is marriage." The judge did not rule that day. Instead, she ordered full discovery: every document, every account, every contract. Both sides were given 6 weeks. Adrian looked pleased. He knew his paper trail was extensive, carefully curated to show joint management. He had built his narrative brick by brick, year after year, anticipating this very battle. But what he didn't know was that Eva had bricks of her own, ones he could not have imagined. In the weeks that followed, Eva became a ghost in her own home. She spoke little, slept even less, her life consumed by files, folders, backups. Every evening after Adrian left the condo claiming late meetings, dinners with investors, she spread documents across the kitchen table, cross-referencing, cataloging. She found old commit logs from the first year of Navy Bridge, each time stamped, each line of code marked with her username. She found archived emails to immigration nonprofits, early contracts signed solely by her hand, receipts for hosting services paid from her personal account long before Adrian's involvement. Her lawyer urged patience. "Don't front-load everything. Hold back the most damning evidence until trial. Let him think he's winning." It was agonizing. Each deposition, each preliminary hearing, Adrian strutted like a victor. He told half-truths with such conviction that even Eva's confidence faltered. Former employees testified on his behalf, repeating rehearsed lines about his visionary leadership. One even claimed Adrian had been the first to propose the entire Navy Bridge concept, portraying Eva as merely technical support. Eva wanted to scream, to slam her proof on the table. But she held back, clutching her lawyer's warning: timing is everything. One evening, as snow fell softly outside their condo, Eva received an anonymous message through LinkedIn. The sender's name was hidden, but the text was short: "Check the Ontario Property Registry." Her heart racing, she logged into the database. What she found nearly broke her. A new mortgage had been registered against the condo, bearing her signature. She had never seen it. The debt was massive, secured against their only shared property. Adrian had forged again. She confronted him that night, voice trembling. "What did you do?" Adrian didn't even flinch. He poured a drink, swirling the amber liquid lazily. "Relax. It's just leverage for the case. Cash flow, temporary. You forged my name." He smirked. "Prove it." Those 2 words sank into her skin like ice. Prove it. That was his shield. His arrogance, his entire strategy hide behind complexity, behind paper, behind the assumption that no one would believe her. Eva realized then that confronting him directly was useless. He had no shame, no conscience, only calculation. If she wanted to win, she would need to let him step deeper into his own trap. Her ally came unexpectedly. Veronica, a woman Eva had never met, reached out through an encrypted email. I know what he's doing. I was part of it. Can we talk? Skeptical but desperate, Eva agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on Queen Street. Veronica was younger than she expected, 30 at most, with tired eyes and a nervous grip on her coffee cup. I didn't know he was married when we started, Veronica admitted, her voice low. He told me you were just a partner, that the company was his. He said the ranch sorry, the property was being sold, that you wanted it gone. I believed him. Eva's chest tightened. Ranch. The word echoed the very land her father had told her to protect, the farmland near Hamilton she had inherited after his death. The only piece of family history she possessed. She hadn't thought about it in months, too consumed by Navi Bridge. But now Veronica was saying Adrian had planned to sell it. Veronica slid a folder across the table. Inside were emails, financial projections, property development plans, all in Adrian's handwriting. In them, he spoke of flipping Eva's land for millions, of cutting her out entirely. I don't want to be part of this anymore, Veronica whispered. He'll throw me under the bus, just like he's trying to do to you. Eva thanked her, promising nothing but silently clutching the folder like a lifeline. It was another piece of the puzzle, another brick for her wall of truth. The weeks crawled by, each deposition a knife twist. Adrian's lawyer painted Eva as unstable, paranoid, jealous of her husband's success. He hinted at cultural differences, portraying her as submissive, suggesting she had relied on Adrian's leadership because she lacked confidence in Western business practices. The insinuation burned, but Eva sat silent, jaw tight, waiting. Her own deposition was grueling. For hours. Adrian's attorney pressed her. Did Adrian attend meetings? Yes, sometimes. Did he speak to investors? Occasionally. Did he handle finances? He had access. Each yes felt like a betrayal of her truth, twisted into evidence against her. By the end, she was drained, her throat raw, her hands shaking. But still she waited. Her father's foresight saved her. Digging through an old lockbox in her storage unit, Eva found a sealed envelope marked in his handwriting. For Eva, if ever needed. Inside were notarized statements, bank slips, and a letter. Her father had suspected Adrian long before she did. He had tracked small irregularities in ranch accounts, documented conversations, even consulted a private investigator. He wrote, I don't trust him. Protect yourself. Protect the land. Don't let him touch what is yours. Eva wept over the letter, her tears staining the paper. Her father had seen what she could not. And even after death, he was guiding her hand. As the trial date approached, Adrian grew bolder. He taunted her in private, whispering, Soon you'll be a guest in my company. He arrived at court with flashy suits, laughing with his lawyer, shaking hands with acquaintances in the hallway. To the outside world, he was the wronged husband, the visionary founder, the man carrying his ungrateful wife. Eva, meanwhile, played her part. She looked tired, uncertain, overshadowed. She let him believe she was beaten. She let him stand taller, boast louder, weave his story deeper. Because when the curtain finally rose, she would burn it all down. The night before trial, Eva spread her evidence across her lawyer's conference table. The old emails, the commit logs, the forged signatures, the property registry, Veronica's folder, her father's letter. Each piece was a blade. Together, they were a sword. Her lawyer studied the pile, eyes wide. This is enough to bury him. Not yet, Eva said quietly. Tomorrow. We let him speak first. Let him swear on everything he's built. Then we cut him open with the truth. The morning of trial dawned gray and cold. Eva dressed in her best suit, her hair pulled back tightly, her face calm. She walked into the courtroom with steady steps, her lawyer beside her. Across the aisle, Adrian smirked, confident as ever. The judge called order. Adrian's attorney launched into his opening statement, painting Adrian as the architect of Navi Bridge, the man who sacrificed his career for love and business, the rightful owner of its success. Adrian himself testified for hours, recounting fabricated stories of contracts he negotiated, clients he secured, strategies he devised. His voice rang smooth, unwavering, a performance rehearsed to perfection. Eva sat silently, her eyes never leaving his face. Let him dig deeper, she thought. Let him choke on his own lies. Because the sting was coming, the courtroom was hushed, the kind of silence that hummed with tension. As Adrian leaned back in the witness chair, his testimony had stretched over 2 hours, weaving a tale of sacrifice, brilliance, and partnership. He described himself as the brain behind Navi Bridge's growth, the steady hand guiding Eva's raw technical skill. Each lie layered neatly atop the last, a tower of deceit that seemed, for a time, unshakable. The judge's face was unreadable. A few members of the gallery nodded as if swayed. Adrian glanced at Eva across the room, a sly smile tugging at his lips. The look of a man convinced he had already won. "Your Honor," Eva's lawyer said, rising calmly, "we would like to begin our cross-examination." She approached the witness stand, papers in hand. "Mr. Clark, you testified that you negotiated the Henderson contract, correct?" "Yes," Adrian replied smoothly. The lawyer held up a document. "This is the Henderson contract, signed solely by Ms. Tran. No mention of you, no communication from you. How do you explain that?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "I worked behind the scenes. And the kinetic systems deal. You said you secured that one as well." "Yes." Another document. "Emails between Ms. Tran and kinetic systems executives show no trace of your involvement. In fact, one executive wrote that you introduced yourself as her spouse, not her business partner." Adrian shifted in his seat. I must have been misremembered. Piece by piece, the lawyer chipped away at his facade. But Adrian remained defiant, weaving half-truths, doubling down. He still looked certain that the balance of evidence favored him. Then Eva's lawyer paused. "Your Honor, we request permission to introduce newly discovered evidence." Adrian's attorney jumped up. "Objection. This is outside discovery." The judge raised a hand. "I'll allow it. Proceed." Eva stood, her hands steady as she carried a thick folder forward. "This evidence was compiled by my late father before his passing. It documents financial irregularities, forged signatures, and attempts to unlawfully seize my family's property." She placed the folder before the judge. The pages inside carried years of meticulous notes, bank slips, affidavits from ranch hands, even security footage of Adrian rifling through files. At the back was her father's letter, "Don't let him take what is yours." The judge read silently for several minutes, her brow furrowing deeper with each page. Across the courtroom, Adrian's smug confidence faltered. His hand twitched against the table, fingers drumming nervously. "Mr. Clark," the judge said at last, her voice sharp as steel. "Did you forge these refinancing documents for the Hamilton property?" Adrian opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His lawyer whispered frantically, but the judge cut him off. "Answer the question." Yes or no?" The silence stretched until Adrian muttered, "Yes." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Eva felt her lungs fill with air as if she had been drowning for years and was finally surfacing. The judge's gaze hardened. "And did you transfer funds from Navi Bridge accounts without authorization?" Adrian stared at the table. He did not answer. "Your silence is telling," the judge said. "This court has seen enough." But Eva was not finished. She turned to the gallery. "Your Honor, I call Veronica Sullivan as a witness." The doors opened, and Veronica entered, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. Adrian's face drained of color. Under oath, Veronica laid everything bare: the affair, the plans to develop Eva's land, the forged documents she had helped prepare, the schemes to sell Navi Bridge behind Eva's back. She handed over emails where Adrian boasted of his manipulations, where he admitted Eva was merely the face while he would reap the rewards. When the emails were projected on the courtroom screen, Adrian buried his face in his hands. The Tower of Lies collapsed in full view of everyone. The judge's ruling was swift and uncompromising. This court finds that Mr. Clark engaged in systematic fraud, forgery, and theft. He attempted to usurp ownership of Navi Bridge and misappropriate inherited property, effective immediately. Ms. Tran is granted full ownership of all disputed assets. Mr. Clark's claims are dismissed in entirety. Furthermore, this matter will be referred to the Crown Attorney for criminal prosecution. Her gavel struck once, twice. The sound echoed like a verdict on Adrian's entire life. 2 officers escorted him from the courtroom. For the first time, Eva saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing money, but fear of prison bars closing around him. The weeks after the ruling blurred in a rush of relief and exhaustion. Adrian was charged with fraud and forgery, his bail set high, his reputation shredded across the business press. Former allies abandoned him. Witnesses who had lied on his behalf faced perjury investigations. Veronica, in exchange for her cooperation, avoided charges but lost her career in real estate. Eva reclaimed Navi Bridge. She changed every lock, every password, every point of access. She hired a new financial officer, someone vetted and trusted, and rebuilt the culture Adrian had tried to poison. The company thrived, contracts returning, investors reassured by her resilience. On weekends, Eva drove to Hamilton, to the farmland her father had cherished. She walked the property slowly, touching fence posts, listening to the quiet. The ranch was safe. Her father's legacy was intact. She promised him, silently, that she would protect it always. Months later, as Adrian's criminal trial concluded with a guilty verdict and a 12-year prison sentence, Eva stood on her condo balcony overlooking Toronto. The city lights shimmered like constellations. She sipped her tea, breathing deeply of the cold night air. She thought about revenge, about how easy it would be to gloat. But what she felt was something different. This was justice. Adrian had destroyed himself with his greed. She had only revealed the truth. Navi Bridge grew beyond her wildest dreams. New partnerships flourished. Immigrants she had once met in crowded community centers now stood in her office, employed through her platform, thriving because of her vision. The company was no longer just survival, it was a beacon. And Eva, once the quiet girl coding alone in a damp basement, had become something Adrian never imagined unstoppable. On the 1-year anniversary of the verdict, Eva returned to the Hamilton Ranch at dawn. She sat on the porch with a steaming mug, watching the sun climb over the horizon. The field stretched wide, glistening with dew, the cattle grazing peacefully. She raised her cup in a silent toast. "To my father," she whispered. "To the land, to the company, to freedom." The wind stirred the trees gently, as if carrying his answer. Eva smiled. The fight had scarred her. Yes, but it had also remade her. She was no longer the immigrant girl with 2 suitcases and fragile courage. She was a founder, a survivor, a protector of legacy. And above all, she was free. Thank you for watching and welcome to the Revenge Diaries. If you enjoyed this story, we'd truly appreciate a like and subscribe to keep us motivated to bring you more. Wishing you a wonderful and positive day ahead.